My name is Linda, and I am 30 years old. I am married to Joy, who is 37. Together, we share two beautiful children who are the light of our lives. Our son, John, is a curious, witty, and intelligent boy who has an infectious sense of humor that brings laughter to even the toughest days. Our daughter, Mary, is a gentle soul with a heart full of kindness, and her love for singing fills our home with melodies that seem to carry hope even in the darkest moments. Joy and I have been married for 12 years, and I used to believe we had a love story that would stand the test of time. When we first got married, it felt like a dream come true. Joy was everything I could have wished for in a partner. Kind, thoughtful, and devoted. He would always find ways to make me feel special, whether it was through small surprises, heartfelt words, or the way he held my hand like he never wanted to let go. He would tell me every single day that he loved me, and I never doubted him. I felt secure, cherished, and deeply connected to him. We dreamed of building a life together, raising a family, and growing old side by side. 2 years into our marriage, we welcomed John into our lives. Becoming parents was an incredible experience that brought us closer. I still remember the way Joy's face lit up the first time he held John in his arms. It was a moment of pure joy and pride. 2 years later, Mary was born, and our little family felt complete. Life seemed perfect. Joy worked tirelessly to provide for us, and I embraced my role as a stay-at-home mom, caring for our children and creating a warm, loving home. Those early years were filled with laughter, late-night talks, and shared dreams for the future. But over time, things began to change. At first, it was subtle. Joy started coming home later than usual, saying he had extra work to finish. He began taking more trips for business, often with little notice, and when I asked for details, his responses were vague. The small, affectionate gestures that once defined our relationship began to disappear. He stopped saying, "I love you" as often, and when he did, it felt routine, lacking the sincerity it once had. Conversations grew shorter, and the warmth in his eyes when he looked at me seemed to fade. I tried to convince myself that he was just stressed or overworked, that this was a phase we would get through. But deep down, I felt a growing sense of unease. I missed the man I married, the man who used to make me feel like I was his whole world. I tried to reach out, to ask if something was wrong, but he always brushed me off. He insisted he was working hard for the family, but his words felt hollow. The distance between us grew, and no matter how much I tried to bridge the gap, he seemed further away than ever. 7 years ago, everything I believed about our marriage came crashing down. Joy had gone on another one of his trips, and while tidying up the house, I stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to see: a pair of plane tickets. One of the tickets had his name, and the other had the name of a woman I didn't know. My heart stopped. The room seemed to spin as I stared at the tickets, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, but one question loomed above all others. How could he do this to me? When Joy returned, I confronted him. I showed him the tickets, my voice trembling with hurt and anger, and demanded an explanation. I was desperate for him to tell me something that would ease the pain, to deny what seemed so obvious. But instead of the honesty or remorse I had hoped for, he dismissed my concerns. He claimed she was nobody, that I was overreacting, and that I was making something out of nothing. His indifference cut deeper than the betrayal itself. I was devastated, but I chose to stay. I told myself it was for the sake of our children, who were still so young and innocent. I wanted to believe that things could change, that the man I married was still somewhere beneath the stranger he had become. I clung to the hope that time would heal the rift between us, that we could somehow rebuild what had been broken. But as the years went by, that hope began to fade. Joy's behavior didn't change. He remained distant, emotionally unavailable, and secretive. The loving words and gestures that once made me feel so special were gone, replaced by silence and avoidance. We continued to live under the same roof, but it felt like we were merely coexisting. The man I once shared everything with now felt like a stranger, and the love that had once filled our home was replaced by an emptiness I couldn't ignore. I poured all my energy into being there for John and Mary, trying to give them the love and stability they deserved. But the ache in my heart remained. I longed for the life we had once dreamed of, for the connection we had once shared. I wondered if Joy ever thought about the promises we made to each other, the life we had planned. And though I tried to keep moving forward, the weight of what we had lost was always there, a constant reminder of a love that once seemed unbreakable but had slowly slipped away. One day, I reconnected with an old friend, Alex, whom I hadn't seen in years. The moment we started talking again, it felt like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying began to lift. Alex had always been a kind and empathetic person, but now, as I watched him interact with his wife, it was clear that he had grown into someone even more attentive and caring. The way he looked at her, the way he listened when she spoke, and the way he made her feel loved and appreciated, it all hit me harder than I expected. It made me painfully aware of what had been missing in my own marriage. For years, I had felt invisible, as though my needs and feelings didn't matter, and seeing Alex reminded me of the warmth and connection I had once longed for but no longer believed was possible. As Alex and I began to talk more frequently, I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't done in years. Our conversations weren't inappropriate, but they were deeply personal. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt understood. Alex listened with genuine interest, and his responses were thoughtful and kind. It wasn't romantic. It was about feeling seen and valued as a person. That feeling became a lifeline for me, pulling me out of the emotional void I had been living in. But as comforting as it was, I knew deep down that it was also a reflection of everything I wasn't getting from my husband, Joy. When Joy discovered my conversations with Alex, his reaction was immediate and intense. He was furious. There were accusations, arguments, and a sense of betrayal that neither of us had the words to fully articulate. But as painful as those moments were, they forced us to confront the growing chasm in our marriage. Joy, in one of our rare calm conversations, admitted that he still loved me. His confession was unexpected, and it caught me off guard. He promised to change, to be the husband I needed him to be. I wanted to believe him, I really did, but years of feeling neglected had made me wary. His words gave me a fragile hope, but they weren't enough to erase the pain or rebuild the trust that had been broken. Not long after, my health took a sudden and severe turn. I became very sick and had to be hospitalized. During those difficult days, Joy was by my side. He stayed with me in the hospital, holding my hand and whispering reassurances. He told me he loved me, words I hadn't heard with such sincerity in years. There was a vulnerability in his voice, as though he realized how close he had come to losing me. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe that things could change. His presence and devotion during my illness gave me a glimmer of hope, but that hope was fragile, flickering like a candle in a storm. After I recovered, Joy made small but noticeable efforts to change. He began helping more around the house, something he had rarely done before. He tried to be more affectionate, initiating conversations and making an effort to show he cared. But while his actions were a step in the right direction, they weren't enough to erase the years of hurt. My trust in him was brittle, like glass that had been shattered and glued back together. Every small argument, every moment of thoughtlessness, threatened to break it again. I also had to face my own choices. While my connection with Alex had been innocent, it wasn't without consequences. I had sought emotional support outside my marriage instead of confronting the problems head-on. It was a painful realization, but it forced me to take responsibility for my part in the struggles Joy and I were facing. Letting go of the feelings I had developed during my time with Alex wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Forgiving myself was just as hard as trying to forgive Joy, and it was a process that took more time than I anticipated. Even now, Joy and I are still trying to rebuild our relationship. He tells me he loves me, and I want to believe him, but there's always a part of me that questions whether things will ever truly change. The years of neglect and disappointment have left scars that don't fade easily. I find myself caught between wanting to move forward and being held back by the weight of the past. Through it all, I've realized that I need to focus on myself. For too long, I defined my worth by my roles as a wife and mother, but I'm learning to find happiness within myself. I've started reading books that inspire me, taking long walks to clear my mind, and seeking out small moments of peace in my daily life. My children are my anchor, and I pour my energy into creating a loving and stable home for them. Life is far from perfect, and I don't know what the future holds for Joy and me. But I've come to understand that healing takes time, and progress isn't always linear. Each day is a new chance to rebuild, to forgive, and to hope. For now, I'm taking it one step at a time, holding on to the belief that even the most fractured relationships can find a path to renewal. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe.
Echoes
Of
Reality.